Hey guys, Matt here from Element Movement. In today's video, we're going to be taking you guys through how to set up the complete program for your training. A lot of people in this day and age have tried the gym before, they've done different things, whether it be a boot camp with a PT, and they still find themselves a little bit lost on what to do from day to day, week to week, into more of a long-term program. So in this video, we're going to break down what we call the primal patterns. The primal patterns are going to be the base for your exercise selection. And when you're piecing together your days and your weeks of how you're going to train, you're going to use these primal patterns to make sure that you get not only a healthy, well-balanced program, but a program that lasts and keeps you progressing for years to come. So I'm going to break this down into an option, whether you can do all these movements in 1 day, a 2 day, or a 3 day training program. It compiles up of 9 different patterns that we're going to do and look at different options you can do and progress throughout your years. Take a look. All right, so before we get started in going through the movement patterns or the primal patterns for your program, let's first talk about a bit of base equipment that you're going to need. Now, I'm not going to lie, I know there's a lot of great bodyweight training programs out there that you can do, and yes, they are fantastic, but I also do believe it's worthwhile in spending a small investment to set yourself up so you do have some perfect tools to train with. Now, you can pick and choose which ones you want to start with. I recommend starting with this as a small pack, and then we'll look at the progressions in terms of things like barbells and kettlebells. But to start with, I would always say get a good yoga mat. Now on the floor here, I've got 2 yoga mats. They're fantastic. They're from a company called Mirror Mat. I'll put a link that you guys can have a look at their website. They're great. They're nice and large. Second thing I've got here is a Swiss ball. Now we're going to have a look at how we use this for a lot of stability work, but also core conditioning. We can also use it as a simple bench for a lot of our movements, as opposed to having like a standard bench that you'd use for bench presses and things like that. Next up is a pair of dumbbells. Now obviously, go on the lighter side here so you've got more versatility with the movements you do, and then you can progress as you go. And the last thing I've got here is a suspension system. This allows us to do a lot of our pulling movements, one arm, single arms, also leg movements, but even things like pushing on an unstable surface. So that's a nice little kit you can start with. Again, the suspension straps, a Swiss ball, yoga mats and dumbbells. That's going to be a great starting point, and we can progress from there. We can use those for all of our different patterns. Next up, guys, we're going to go through the movement series that you're going to be using in this program. Okay, let's talk about the primal patterns themselves. We've got a hinge, a squat, lunge, horizontal push, horizontal pull, overhead push, overhead pull, upward pull, and downward press. That's also known as a dip. So they're going to be the 9 patterns we're using throughout the week. I recommend choosing 3 to do in each day and dividing into a 3-day training program. But if you don't have 3 days to train, you can do it in a 1 day or even a 2-day series and just incorporate as many of the movements as you can. Now let's go through different progressions for each one of these movements, and what we're going to do is divide it into 1 upper body pull, 1 upper body push, and a lower body, either being the lunge, hinge, or the squat. So I'll give you 3 different days and combinations you can choose and progress with.
So for day 1, we're going to start off with the squat. I'm using a wall and the Swiss ball here for a basic assisted squat. Once you can maintain full range of motion on the wall, you lose the ball and start to practice what we call an air squat. As you go down, just bring the hands out in front of you. That just helps you posture up as you go down. Once you come to doing 10 of those or more, you can progress with a bit of load. Here I'm holding a single dumbbell in my chest. This is called a goblet squat. To make this harder, I'm going to now use 2 dumbbells, load them onto my shoulders, and this is now what we call a front squat. You can also do this movement with a barbell, kettlebells, sandbag, whatever you've got at home. And then we're going to superset the squats with a horizontal pull. I'm starting off using the rings here on the suspension strap, just doing a simple horizontal row. If you've got some weights, like I do here, you're going to then do a second option, which is a bent over row. This also works really well with a barbell with bigger Olympic plates, as you can use the plates as a good point of reference to touch the ground at the bottom. And then if you're up for a real good challenge, the renegade row is where you sit up in a push-up position and you row alternating the arms. All of them are a horizontal position and a great pulling action. The final movement we're going to do is an overhead press. So So I'm starting off with a simple single arm dumbbell overhead press. If you've got good shoulder mobility, you can go to a double arm push press. And then if you're looking for a bit more of a challenge, the split jerk is a great athletic movement that again also incorporates the overhead press. If you're out on the road and you've got no equipment at all around, but you're up for a good challenge, any variation of a handstand or a handstand push-up will get a nice overhead press in action in as well. Now let's have a look at day 2. Day 2, we're going to start with a hinge. To get used to a hinge, I recommend just practicing a body weight good morning, where you're just learning to fold at the hips and not throughout the spine. Once you've mastered that, and you can see yourself doing that well and feeling it well, you can start to progress to some load. Here I've got the dumbbells, and I'm doing almost like a suitcase or a double arm suitcase deadlift. And then I transition to a sumo deadlift where I take the weights in between my legs. This one's a great one for the hips. On day 2, we're then going to do 2 other upper body positions. For our pushing action, we're actually going to go into a horizontal push, starting off with just a basic knee push-up. You want to work on being able to do about 10 of these comfortably on the knees, bringing your chest to the floor with a nice straight back before you go onto your toes. If you've got weights around and you want to try something different, flip on over onto the back and use the Swiss ball as a bench to get a bit more instability going on, but still using that horizontal pushing position. So you can see my arms are traveling in the same direction as they were for the push-up, which makes this a good alternative if you do struggle with things like push-ups. Now, the last position on day 2, we're going to do an overhead pull. Now I'm going to use the suspension straps again here. If you've got a chin-up bar and you can do pull-ups, or you've got some bands to use, by all means use that. A lot of people, this is where they want to start. Feet on the ground, hands reaching over the head. So it's different to our horizontal pull. Now, day 3, we're doing a lunge to start with. I'm doing a reverse lunge to kick things off here, a nice easy way. To have a bit more of a challenge, again, you can use your suspension strap here and set up almost like a single leg squat. Just like when I was doing those air squats, I'm using my arms to help posture myself up. And then if you've got those 2 sorted, just like the other variations, we can start to add some load. So I'm starting off with holding the weights just by my side here in a carry position, doing forward lunges, but I can also rack those onto my shoulders into a front rack lunge. You can also do these in a reverse lunge and even lateral lunges where you're stepping out to the side as I demonstrate here. The last 2 movements on day 3, we're going to look at upward pulling, where we're taking weight from the ground and pulling it in an upward motion. Starting off with a single arm clean, taking the weight from the floor onto my shoulders. Then I can transition to a snatch, which is a bit more explosive, where you take the weight from the ground to over the head. We can also do both those movements with 2 dumbbells. Double arm clean. Again, pulling from the ground and up onto our shoulders. And then we can do that with the snatch as well, from the ground straight over the head. They're also fantastic movements of the barbell, but they are quite complicated and take some time to learn. And then the last position for day 3 is our downward push, also known as a dip. Here for the dip, I'm using my suspension straps again. If you've got a bench, a stool, a seat, or something fixed that you can just dip down on, that's great. Also, parallel bars are going to be awesome for that.
All right, so now that we have our base training days of 3 days divided up into 3 movements of our primal patterns, we want to look at how much of what we need to do. So I recommend starting off with the goal to try to do 30 perfect reps of each movement at least once a week. So that's 30 perfect squats, hinges, and lunges, and the same for your upper body pull, push, and downward, upward pressing movements and pulling movements. So make sure that the first rep and the last rep are identical. We don't want to be starting well and then fatiguing and doing really poor form reps as we go. Practice perfect, guys. Really important we start to master that and master the basics. from there we can increase the intensity and the density of your program as you go. But let's start with 30 reps of each. Once you get into that, if that's been 2 weeks and you're no longer sore, you're feeling good, we can start to increase loading of the movements, start to look at more complex options of those movements, and progress you as need be. But let's just see if we can master this for the first month, and then we'll start to show you guys some other interesting patterns that we can do to make it a little bit more complex and enjoyable for you. Hope you guys enjoyed that. Stay tuned for the next video, which is a follow-up for this one.